ladies and gentlemen of all ages, boys and girls. Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of Angry Meat Production. We appreciate you coming in and letting us be a part of your lives week in and week out. We hope to do our best to present you with something that your eardrums delight in. Whether you're looking at us on YouTube or Rumble, or listening to us on Spotify, Google, or Anchor, or any of the other podcast services that we are currently on or trying to get on, we thank you. And if you don't mind, at the end of every episode, stop by, leave us a comment, leave us a like. If it asks for 5 stars, we'll take 5 stars, even if you don't like us. 5 stars are what it's all about. With that being said, we hope you enjoy our attempt to make our advocation our vocation. Ladies and gentlemen, let the games begin.
Welcome, Angry Fable. Today on Psychos and Sociopaths, we're going to talk about cults. Now, that's not the horses like Johnny thought when we're starting on this one. And we got Andrea up late. It's true crimes now. It's not night shift anymore, right?
TBD. Yeah. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay. And we got BDC Sanders of Disruptors Podcast. And the reason why I brought these guys up to and lady got them is we do the true crime stuff, and I just can't understand cults, and I wanted extra people to help me understand cults because it's baffling. I mean, Andrea told me about the Anthill kids, and I did an episode of them, and I'm still scarred from that. So
it's terrible.
It was horrible. That whole cult was almost reminding me of Albert Fish, of what he did. I mean, Roch, I can't even pronounce his last name. Terrell Toll.
Well, right, and the difference would be that.
Yeah.
The difference would be that in this case, with the Anthill kids, it was families, so it'd be adults and children that all of this is going on with, So
there was even a point to where one of the mothers had a baby, and instead of going away from this cult, she let the baby out into the cold and let it die, let it freeze to death, just so it wouldn't feel the discomfort of what was happening with her in this cult. Because it was. I mean, I'm protective of kids. It can be my kids. It can be other people's kids. I don't care. And I would rain fire.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So when you're talking about this cult, what is it that they were doing?
Eventually he ended up becoming an alcoholic and becoming abusive toward the other cultists.
What was it? 12 adults, 22 children?
Yeah, it was a ton.
Yeah.
And all members as a religious requirement. So he had to impregnate all the female members as a religious requirement and fathered 26 children.
Wow. They had to break their own legs, BC.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and it gets that's the least of what happened them to be committed to the cult.
Mild. Yeah, that was mild. They even had a special needs kid try to do surgery on another person or another kid.
And
You're
what era was this?
Asked.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can skip to a better cult. That's a little.
That is nothing. That is.
I
won't repeat the.
It only gets better from here, so we start at the bottom, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Let's do that.
Well,
and we'll end with Scientology.
Yeah, and the other one is back from all of our time frame is Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate was
yeah.
And going from a little milder, Marshall Applewhite on that one. I mean, he didn't hurt anybody other than the fact that he convinced everybody to take a trip to
kill
Mexico.
Themselves.
No,
that was the hilltop moment, right?
That was that, but it was also the fact that he convinced a lot of the males to go down to Mexico because they're anti-sex. Mm-hmm. So they all went to Mexico to have their members removed. Nowadays, you could do that in the U.S. perfectly easy.
Oh, so then why would someone do that? Do you think?
Well,
I mean, just join it in general. Why does someone join a cult? Do you think?
I mean, in my opinion, the same thing is with gangs. I mean, why would you do horrible things? It's more or less the acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'll have cults. I mean, if all four of us got together, we would have a wonderful time. Would it be a cult? No, but we would have like something to talk about and something to, combine us. We would enjoy each other's company. That's that. They want to enjoy, a section of their lives with other people. And if it wasn't for like, I'm going to get this guy up, Ted Patrick, he wrote an article, he wrote a book, but he is also the father of deprogramming. And he didn't have any high school. He dropped out of high school. He pretty much starting out, he ended up doing in the wrong way because he ended up technically kidnapping these people and bringing them out. And he would starve them a little bit for 2 weeks, and then he would end up start with the deprogramming. And all he really did from a couple of the interviews that I did listen to was he asked questions. It was like what you were telling me with a couple of the gang members that you had to do. You ask them questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a process of deprogramming, because sadly enough with me, with like relationships, I'll get like depressed after someone ended up breaking up with me. And it wasn't until like, hey, didn't she do this and this and this? It's a deprogramming process, just asking questions.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is basically this guy would come in, not kidnap them, but he would take them against their will. We call that kidnapping, but he would take them and then get them removed from all stimulus, so to speak.
Yeah,
and then just ask them questions about the cult. In other words, if the cult is good for you, why did they ask you to break your own legs? Or if the cult, that's what you're saying is basically just a system of asking questions.
Yeah. I mean, I ask questions way too much on, just period. And I guess it would be kind of, I'd probably still be susceptible.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, were you saying this guy, because I thought you said starve them. Is this a separate incident? Like he's not questioning them about the cult. He's doing his own, is he doing his own thing to make his own cult?
No,
I miss that?
He's actually the father of deprogramming and removing people from cults.
Oh, and so starvation was part of that.
Yeah.
I think the starvation part of it, and with the whole sensory deprivation and kind of the isolation, is to remove any and all influences. Because I think Tommy Lee Jones said it best in Men in Black: humans are dumb animals. So we have memories that are tied to everything. So whether it's a smell, a taste, a sound, I think this guy was removing everybody, the people that he was targeting. He was removing them from everything that could be even remotely associated with their former environment, trying to break that brainwashing. And I think, unfortunately, starvation has something to do with it too.
Well, I think the starvation would also almost provide now, and I hate to put it this way, but like a Stockholm effect, because now they're immediately dependent upon him. I mean, depending on what they've come from, maybe they were starved before, but I mean, like, I think that aspect would then, they quickly become dependent on him where they had been someone else for so long.
Yeah.
To gain their trust, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, it's, I don't want to call it a lesser evil, but maybe a necessary one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, did you hear that? I heard it. Yeah. No. It's I would venture that cults probably within the last 100 years have grown more in whatever popularity or membership than 100 years before that. And the reason I would say that is
I just thought of Costco. Go ahead.
Costco.
You said a membership, like a membership to a game or to a cult.
Yeah. Well, okay. Think of that. You offer somebody a membership, they think they're actually getting something in return.
Yeah.
So,
True.
I mean, yeah, if you think, okay, now I'm joining this cult and they're going to give me what I have not received from either family or employment or the military or whatever, they would be more susceptible to it. But I would also venture to say the more we're all interconnected through social media, through internet connections, traveling, being able to move from one city to another. So if I stay in the same city I'm born in, I may not ever get exposed to a cult. But then if I move to, say, Waco, Texas, if someone wants to classify the Branch Davidian as a cult, then I would be exposed to that, and then it could grow.
I'm so sorry. Were you talking?
No, well, he was like, well, Branch Davidian could be almost a cult. I was like, no, that was definitely a cult.
Right. So like can I read you guys off a couple of things I wrote about tactics on how they recruit or retain members of a cult? Because, when we talked about this last time, right, at the end of the show that we did, we were talking about cults, and that's precisely what we were talking about, is how and why, what groups of people, what kind of people seem to be susceptible to this. And actually, kind of more surprising than I realized, it's kind of all over the board. It's not one particular group of people. So I'll kind of paraphrase here, but one method used is cognitive dissonance. So basically, this term was coined in the late 50s. It's the idea that when you confront someone with an idea or a value that they're uncomfortable with, they have like a psychologically uncomfortable feeling, and they disconnect. So they feel the need to resolve that. So like little by little, you do this, and then it becomes more plain that they've been deceived, but now they're almost in your grasp now because they want to continue to please you. They don't like this feeling of being uncomfortable psychologically, that you're presenting them with something that doesn't fly with them, right? So to keep them obedient, obviously like internal disagreement, or it says that it uses both formal and informal systems of influence and control to keep members obedient. So, and I'll make this kind of quick, but the obedient method would be like that we usually have an inclination to be a rules follower, right? So in cults, critical thinking obviously is not viewed favorably. You want absolute blind faith in them. And so then we just know that cult leaders are generally more narcissistic, authoritarian. But this is the last piece on this. In 2017, there was a study of former cult members that survived and escaped these cults, and found that 61% of them had more than 12 years of education, often were very passionate about self-improvement and the betterment of mankind and living a fulfilling life. Some other stuff had said people that they would use it almost like a pyramid scheme and have current members reach out to other people that they know to either be like new in town or to have just recently suffered a personal or professional loss, and felt a little hopeless. But this is showing just like the converse of that, because these are people who are educated and happy and just want more self-improvement, are very hopeful. And survivors of cults have been described as being overwhelmingly welcomed, saying that they felt instant friendship and acceptance. That would be to your gang piece, I think. And this is actually a form of love bombing, which in itself is a trait of a certain form of narcissism. And we've learned that a lot of cult leaders are narcissists. So basically, they talk about it happening over time. It doesn't, people can get in relationships that over a million years, all of a sudden things are different, right? This doesn't happen immediately that you walk in and you're breaking your leg. They earn your trust first, and little by little.
Yeah. What surprises me is that whole description of love and compassion and everything like that. But most of the cults that I've looked at, they're all doomsday cults. They're pretty much doomsday cults. Every person that actually end up going in and starting the cult ends up saying the whole world's coming in on us. I mean, you got Charles Manson.
Sometimes those would be more of, I think, the religious cults, right? Because there's political cults, and like then there's some that are like kind of more fueled by sexual stuff. Like the Manson situation was like race war. So I mean, I think it depends on the basis that the cult was formed upon.
Yeah.
I think more or less it's like the Doomsday specifically. I think it's more of a sales pitch. You know, I mean, you get people talking about the end of the world, and it's like, okay, now I've overcome this person with a sense of overwhelming doom and hopelessness. I'm going to pull them in, build them up, and give them this out towards,
once they trust that you can save them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
You have to. There's that portion first. They have to think that you're the one that's going to save them from that.
Yeah, it's like it's the ultimate in gaslighting, from what I see.
Or love bombing, right? That's what.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like the whole world's going to be on fire, but it's okay. You're with me, puppy.
I've got a blanket and an extinguisher.
Oh.
Wow.
Hey, sometimes things come out of my mouth and I don't even understand it either.
It's a beautiful tragedy, you know, knowing David on, you know, for as long as I have.
But yeah. So I'm going to edit that. But the strange thing though, a lot of them do use like physical violence. Heaven Gate on the other one, the ones that are time frame, that was like 97. He used a psychological. He more or less it was more or less like passive aggressive. How he did his disappointment is what his happiness is what you try to crave through, and that's how he did that. I mean, psychological scars still hurt deep from all, and he convinced everybody to do what Jim Jones did. Ended up everybody just murking themselves. So,
in a gross way.
I think with Jim Jones disillusioned not himself with the path that he took, you know, through the church, breaking with the church, and then rejoining with the church, and then breaking with it again. And, you know, when he eventually got to where he started his own religion, and he was even ostracized from that because of the conduct that he was seen engaging in. And then he took the people who he knew believed him, you know, off to establish some kind of new city state. But I think with Jim Jones, a lot of that was just, I mean, it for him, a lot of it, you know, was the narcissism. A lot of it was the power grabbing. And when he saw it slipping, you know, and he escalated his efforts, and, you know, then we have Jonestown. So
yeah. Well, one thing that always
Flavor Aid, not the Kool-Aid, the Flavor Aid.
Yeah, Flavor Aid.
Yeah, because you can't spend the high dollar.
What I'm asking this, was that the highest casualty rate out of all the cults that we're aware of right now?
I think so far.
I think Waco was more. Right?
Well,
Waco was more than 80 people.
Well, let me clarify. People who do it like what did y'all mention
themselves?
Earlier? Heaven's Gate. Yeah, that do it themselves. Because like what
maybe
Jonestown did it themselves. Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate was more than them. I think Heaven's Gate was like 40 something, and Jonestown. No, Heaven's Gate was 42. Let me look back at Jonestown because I wrote that down too. I wouldn't have remembered. Yeah, that was. Oh no! No. Jim Jones was 909.
Yeah,
I got 918.
Well,
now
more than 42.
If you want a good honorable mention, there was an article that came out back in June of this year on the 13th from Reuters. Death toll from a Kenyan doomsday cult crosses 300. So apparently there was a starvation cult in Kenya. They exhumed bodies in forests. It says it's one of the worst cult-related tragedies in recent history. So stuff is still going on. So, I mean, it says that a total of 303 people have now died. There are more than 600 people still reported missing. Now, again, this was dated back on June 13th of this year, but
oh, dang.
Yes, I mean, there's still stuff like that going on. I mean,
You would think, and I'm not even trying to be funny, but you would think starvation is not a tool you could use in parts of Kenya. I don't mean all of Kenya, but parts of Kenya to entice people to join your cult.
That's sad, but yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, that's interesting. Huh.
Well, one of the things I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about the Branch Davidian and casualty rates, but looking at that, it wasn't self-imposed, but their goals were not to harm themselves either. Correct? Am I?
No,
right
I mean,
Correct.
you talking about the Kenyan one?
No,
No,
I
Waco.
apologize. I
Waco,
shifted gears on you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
No,
so
Waco.
sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good.
No, that's what I was saying. So like with Waco, it was not, and I'm not an expert on Waco. I'm just saying
That one wasn't a mass suicide.
right.
It was more or less it was the ATF or the FBI because
they were together, but it was the ATF.
Yeah. They set fire to one of the buildings, and a lot of the people were stuck in that building, and they just stayed there. So I think
you mean ultimately, like they weren't going to do that to themselves anyway. Like that was never going to be. Is your question? Yeah.
Yes.
No, that was never their goal.
Right.
Yeah.
And meaning that if you're studying cults, you've got different objectives. So their objective, I don't think, was ever to self-harm or like I said, I've read some books, but I'm saying I don't know enough about their philosophy other than I don't think they had a end days kind of like these other cults did, where they were saying like the end of days is coming, or the only way to whatever salvation is to actually drink this flavor aid or
right. It was just to follow David Koresh, right? Because he was the Messiah. He believed himself to be,
right.
Yeah, that was like pretty much that.
Yeah, the one this Kenya one, it was actually a Christian cult. They called themselves the Good News International Church. They believe that the only way to go to heaven is if you starved yourself to death.
Oh wow!
Well, people use labels pretty freely, so
nowadays. I mean, you get a lot of the. I mean, look at what's happening nowadays. It's easily to get into these cult groups, and I call them cult groups only because through social media, you have people just. Oh, we have to believe on this stuff, and you can't be in our group if you believe differently, or like like group chats or something like that. I mean,
I think one of the one way to delineate that would be in one, like I wouldn't have necessarily considered it or thought about it this way, but it seems to be true, is that like if you think about social media groups or even religion, let's say like actual like proper, I say religion meaning not some offshoot of something that and when people can, let's say people who are secular by nature, which is fine, consider like any religion to be a cult. You hear that term thrown around, oh, it's just a cult. Well, the difference is, generally speaking, across the board, religions, to like think of your Catholic, Catholicism, Judaism, any of the Christianities, generally try to enrich people's lives and better them in all aspects of their lives, with their families, with their any relationships, with their job, with their home, spirituality, whatever. Whereas the cult aspect is to separate you, right? Like think of an abusive spouse. It's to separate you, get you away from those things, and make you feel like the only way you will be better is with their help. But also not in other areas of your life, like pull you away from that.
I'm so glad that you said that. Only because that was the whole thing this week I was thinking of, is, the difference between an actual religion group and cults. Because I was like, well, if you want to...
Sure, it's a good question.
If you really want to think about it, most religious groups are cults, but, if you're thinking about it the way that you
cult.
Yeah, you define a cult, and it's more harmful to be in a cult than it is to be actually in a religion group. But speaking on the David Koresh thing, the whole thing that got everybody killed on that one was pretty much the FBI and the ATF, and the government wanted to come in and check everything out, and they were waiving their rights. And that's, I mean, even people that were on the sniper team that was I mean, I was listening to Andrew Snuff of Clear Hot Podcast, and he had one of the guys that actually had two of the guys that were on the sniper team, and they didn't even. It was just they even said it was a shit show.
Yeah, one of the books that if you want to read about it and the whole aspect from the negotiation side is Stalling for Time, and it's written by one of the FBI agents that kind of started the whole
Was that Chris?
procedure. Gary Nosler, not Nosner. I'm probably mispronouncing that. It's Gary Noesner. But he was an FBI agent that started to work the skill side of negotiating, actually putting it into play where what you're doing is just slowing down the whole scenario or the whole activity to where you're not necessarily rushing in to kick doors in and stuff. You're allowing decisions to slowly get at least one person out at a time or more, or, to resolve it peacefully. Or even as he writes in the book, sometimes there's not going to be a peaceful resolve, and the person just needs to be in position for a team like a sniper team or someone to stop that threat, or for an assault team to basically be able to go in and get hands on. But he writes about Waco and the process there. And I think kind of like what you were alluding to, where some people were saying, hey, this was a mess from the beginning or whatever. I wasn't there. I wasn't part of any of those agencies, so I don't want to speak on how their investigations or tactics were. I just know from reading from the book, like, you get different perspectives, and then you can kind of sort of understand when you're negotiating and when you're going back and forth and time is on your side. You just don't set arbitrary deadlines to say, okay, at this date and time, we're going to do an entry, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, if you're seeing headway. And so I know that's a decent book to read on that topic, because it's from his perspective, and he was there. He was negotiating during the whole situation.
Yeah, another thing that was messed up on it was a 51-day siege.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is probably going to get us a little bit off topic, but I actually got a comment from that episode I did from a guy actually from Waco during that time frame. He was saying, I wish there was videos of Koresh. It's mounted Carmel. I visited a few times. I guess he visited a couple of times to get shell casing and bullets. I needed to work to get actual raid footage. They also showed the guys on the ladder and rooftops getting shot. And he actually has videos of this stuff. And I really need to reach out to this guy now. But he even says, is like, his dad was setting up with the ATF, and they still hadn't paid him. But he was saying that there was like mounts of cases of and boxes of just bullets, because they had like thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds for that whole siege.
Yeah, well, I think the way, as far as like the progression of events went, because there was some complaints that were filed with the CPS office there in Waco about some the treatment of some of the girls that were staying there. And when they were denied access to the compound, and some of the Branch Davidians would go into town for things like supplies, the law enforcement would always be like, oh, well, that's an unusual amount of guns that they have. And so they used the fact that they were stockpiling weapons and ammunition as more of a foot in the door. And then the ATF just bulldozed it, because and then it might be that my opinion on it is just a little bit jaded, because it's the ATF, but they hammered the whole reason as to why they breached the compound was because of the guns and the ammunition that was being stockpiled there. It stopped being about the health and welfare of the women and children that were inside, but it all became about the guns. And who I think it was the the district attorney at the time, the U.S. district attorney, was a Janet Reno, I think it was.
Yeah.
She really didn't want that, being oh, hey, my ATF failed to do what they were supposed to do, kind of a thing. So there was a lot of marching orders that were being given behind the scenes that even the guys that were there on the ground didn't know anything about. I mean, they were just, basically plug and play grunts, like, here, I'm going to send you in this direction. You need to go do what need to go do what I tell you to do, and not question it. So I really don't fault I don't really fault the guys that were trying to breach, because I mean, again, they were just doing their jobs. But I think that there was a lot of higher brass that was involved with, the logistics side of it, and obviously the administrative side of it. They were
even
getting
public perception.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you remember during the Obama administration, the word optics became a very big thing. It was a very big buzzword. And so I think that they, the information that they were releasing to the major network news at the time, that, the big three, and then I think CNN was on the scene too. They were going in with, they were leading with that story that this is an ATF raid because of the amount of guns and ammunition that are there. They were trying to pose them as, I think even at one point, trying to paint the Branch Davidians as an anti-government militia. And
because Ruby Ridge just happened.
Yeah, Ruby Ridge. Yeah, I mean, Ruby Ridge was like I think 6 months prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
So the ATF was still under a lot of fire because of the way that they handled that particular situation. And so they were looking at this as more of a, hey, we're going to redeem ourselves. And it just made the whole thing even worse for themselves.
Yeah. But another strange thing was the whole Charles Manson thing, the Manson family. I mean, they were pretty much prostitutes. But it just ended up escalating to the point where, I mean, even up until his death, there's people that actually revered Charles Manson as a good person and a good person to talk to. He was that charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, kid, Uncle Charlie loves you.
Yeah. I mean, I actually talked to people that were like fascinated to the point. It's like, oh, Charles Manson, he's a great guy. I was like, what? Did you read all the stuff? I mean, this is like after all the stuff that actually happened, and you're still revering Charles Manson as a good person. Well, yeah, I'm like,
I mean, and that happens anyway in prison with these these high profile cases, whether it was a cult leader or not. I read about it all the time when we're talking about some of the cases about these letters, women. Actually, that was one of the shows I was going to do. I haven't done yet, but that idea of just being relationally like enamored, this bigger than life person. So instead of it being an athlete or a superstar or any other, actor or whatever, it's this, this infamous person in prison. Did you guys see that Leslie Van Houten, she was 53 years in prison. She was one of the Manson chicks, was just released. I think it was last month. I think it was in maybe June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was one of the people that actually killed somebody, right?
She did. And very, very brutally. And she, and so she's, in California, and Newsom refused to deny her appeal. That's what it was. I think that refused to deny her appeal. She had wanted to appeal, and they were trying to stop that. And she got out. So, and when she recounts what she did, it's all gruesome, but I mean, she recounts it to this day, and it was just, she killed a woman because, the idea was everybody had to have blood on their hands. So she killed this woman, but the woman's husband was separated and like in a different, like a bedroom bathroom situation, I think, something like that. And you can hear him being killed in the next room. And then I might have it wrong. She might've killed the man. Either way, she carved the word war on the belly. I think it was of the wife, and then stabbed her in the back, I think 19 times. But yeah, she's walking free now. So that's cool.
That's totally awesome. I some people are that go to prison, because I work corrections, and there's some people in there. I had one guy. He was telling me the whole reason why he was in prison, and I looked up his record and everything. So he was telling me the truth. Was he beat up his uncle for beating up another person? The reason why he was in prison was the fact that he was accepting of what he did. He basically was like, I even told the judge, I was like, I'll do it again. That's what got him set into prison for a couple of years. But he was more or less an upstanding citizen, and you feel for the guy. He's like, man, maybe you shouldn't have done that. But he wasn't like that bad of a guy. I mean, he sucked that he beat the shit out of somebody, and he was in jail for that. But some people can be redeemed, but there's other people like, Charles Manson, every time they had an appeal, it's like, I can understand reason why they're not letting that kind of crazy out in the world ever again. So,
Yeah.
Well, I think when you look at all the personality types, the number one thing is they're all charismatic. So no matter what, nobody's going to follow somebody if they're not at least somewhat charismatic.
Well,
so I would say that people probably, if they knew there was an interview with Charles Manson, because there are plenty of interviews out there with him, and I was in maybe high school, and I can't remember the reporter. They did an interview with Charles Manson, and I remember my mom drinking her old Milwaukee and burning down a cigarette and basically saying, that sumbitch is crazy right there. And he's jumping up on top of a table and sitting like with his legs crossed and talking about playing games with people. It was bizarre for me to watch it. But here we were in a house watching his interview, because it's almost like you have to watch this train wreck.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I would want to follow him, obviously, but he had something that at least got people to listen to him. And I'm quite sure if you've got, at that time, someone younger than you, and you're possibly feeding them with drugs, and then everything is in an upheaval in some of their lives. And I don't know all their background, but he was able to manipulate them,
in your case, it's most of the time frame, it's like with the gangs and everything, it's money. They see that certain person is making
sometimes it is, but also same thing. You can look at every different gang set, either it's Crips, Bloods, Sureños, Latin Kings, Gangster Disciples, Vice Lords, like any of them. And usually the people that move up the chain, at least in the last 10 years, 12 years, are really charismatic. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be really violent and put orders out or keep things very structured, because I guess some cults, things would be very structured, like when you eat, when you drink, when you work, whatever. But yeah, in the gang world, usually the bottom line is charismatic, because even the ones who are not charismatic don't really rise to the top. And most of the sets now it's not like the most violent, dominant person moves up the chain. It's usually the person that is kind of supported by the set for the most part. And that's speaking generally just in the South, but
yeah. Whenever the whole thing is like with the gangs, it's like the how con artists get people to give them money for a pyramid scheme.
Mm-hmm.
I studied how like the Robert Mayhoff stuff, and the way he did it was ingenious. He basically it's like, hey, I'm driving this Lamborghini. It looks nice, huh? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I made a lot of monies on the stocks and blah blah blah. And he wouldn't take the money at first. He would tell us, no. It's too risky for you. I don't want you to do this. You got a family. You should take care of them. And it would work on the person because they wanted that ideal lifestyle. And everybody wants that ideal lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it got to the point to where I was like, hey, I got an opening. I'm going to make them a lot of money. Give me about $10 million or $10,000, whatever you got, you can give me. And they would just toss the money at them. I'm surprised he didn't get like a concussion. Is how fast they're tossing the money at his head.
Well, but it's like sales. Anytime you're selling something, you find out what that person wants, and then that's what you sell them. I had a platoon sergeant in the Army, and he had been a recruiter before he came to our platoon. And he told me that he was a staff sergeant at the time. So he'd probably been in 12 years, 15 years. And when he was a recruiter, he had a really nice car, really nice apartment. And back then, the big stereos and, big TVs, big screen TVs were the new thing. And so if it
wasn't loud, you weren't cool.
Right. So he would bring his potential, like his recruits, by his place, like drive them up in his nice car, walk them around his apartment, show him his stuff, and be like, yeah, I mean, the Army's a great place. Like, I've been in the Army, 3 years? Look at what I got. Knowing that he had been in more than 10 years, but flat out, that was like how he would hook them, because they liked the flashy car, the stereo, and they thought, oh, well, if I join the Army, then I'll be, living this life of luxury. But it's the same thing. Like, if you're interested in something and somebody comes along and sells it to you, just like a cult leader, and they know what you're looking for. The cult leaders, I would assume, I've never met one in person or interviewed them or debriefed them or anything, but I would assume they're very quick reads on body language and how people operate. And they go for the weaker people, probably, and the people that they quickly identify what they want. They're looking for a family, or they're looking for that safety network, or if it's religious based, they may begin to start to question things or show them this is more of what you're going to get, and then when they meet other members in the cult and those members are really nice and inviting, then, I mean, it would be hard to say no if that's what you're looking for in life.
Yeah. Most of the cults, they eventually show that they're having a utopia. They want to create this whole utopia. I mean, it's the same thing as, not to get political and everything, but it's more or less like how socialism and communism ended up. I mean, everybody wanted to be part and grow all at the same time. Everybody be taken care of together, instead of just, the farmer always has food. Everybody should have food. And that's what the utopia, every one of them has a compound almost. Even the sex cults have compounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to the point to where they're making food. Everybody's being taken care of the same way. But eventually, it's really the head leader that's being taken care of the most. You have to give up all your worldly possessions just to be part of this cult at one point in time. And the cult leader is flying in a G5 airplane, while everybody else is like, in like horse and carriage.
Yeah. Same thing. Like, you compare that to the pyramid schemes, like you said, the gang hierarchy, like any of that. And some companies that, are not shell companies, but you know what I mean? Like that bring people in. I'm curious if you can name 3 songs by the band The Cult. I'm just curious.
Oh, man. I hate you a little bit right now.
Sorry, man. I just switch it up for a second. Anybody can jump in. I'm just curious.
No, I used to listen to The Cult all the time. Rain, Firewoman. Okay. I'm Googling this, so I'm still
Walker, she sells Sanctuary.
Oh, you look at that computer screens. Watch their face.
Yeah.
I got you. No, I dig The Cult. That's about the only thing I can tell you about The Cult.
Oh, yeah. See, no, I'm now looking over here now.
Hey, look,
I've got like 7 monitors.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not that involved. It took David
so are there are there any documentaries out there that are decent to watch on a cult?
I liked the Waco one, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was on Netflix. That was pretty good. I sent Andrea a trailer of one the woman that played Hermione from.
Oh, you did. Yeah. If you ever send me something and I don't, send it again or remind me, because I get things go in one ear and out the other all the time.
I'll send it to BC. I like.
Yeah,
You're talking about Hermione from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was in it's what got us started on talking about cults, because I remember part of that movie to where it was a mimic type day, mirroring effect. It's what the FBI do to where for
Colonia.
It's what they do to get you into there. I mean, if you're screaming or crying and everything, you have a group of people that are doing the same thing. It's like the simplest and easiest way I can understand it, explain it and understand it, is a snake charmer. The snake charmer, the music isn't getting the snake to do what the person wants him to do. It's the movement. The snake is mirroring the movement, and that's the mirroring effect. A lot of FBI agents actually use this for negotiations, to where they're mirroring. They'll like I think it's like the last three words of the sentence they'll repeat back, because in their minds, it's showing that they're listening and they're trying to understand the person's situation.
So the way it's described when you look up what it's about is it just says that it's set against the backdrop of the 1973 Chilean military coup and the Colonia Dignidad, a notorious cult in the south of Chile led by German lay preacher Paul Schaefer. It's a true life account of life under subjugation, abuse, and torture, and 44 years of repression. We'll have to check it out.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of movies out there about. I mean, the David Koresh one is the.
There's the one about what was the Indian? Oh, Anna. Somebody. Say what?
Osho. There's a documentary, I think. If it's the same one you're.
The Wild Wild.
Wild Country. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Yes, it is the Wild Wild Country. I started it, but I haven't finished it. But it's supposed to be good.
Yeah. I mean, let me find out. I got the internet at my feet, and I'm just.
So back when you were talking about mirroring, now, when you're talking about like mirroring, you're talking about techniques, right? Like interview techniques or techniques.
It's how you get a person to feel more comfortable towards you. They use it. They use it for dating, and they use it for a lot of things. It's just a way to more or less me and you with comics.
Okay.
Yes, I use my hands a lot. Stop.
No, that's what I'm doing, right? I'm mirroring what you're doing. So does it make you feel more comfortable, or does it freak you out? I'm messing with you. I know what you're talking about.
That doesn't make me feel more comfortable.
No. I'm messing with you. I know what you mean. It's like more of if I come into a room and you and I are talking, and I am talking a lot with my hands, I'm really animated. You may be like, "Come on, dude!" I move at a different pace. I talk at a different pace. But if I start mirroring what pace you talk at, or what your cadence of speech, it does start to slow things down. It's the same as like building rapport, and then. Like repeating the three words at the end, or just repeating back what someone says so that they fully understand that I understand what they're saying. So they feel heard. So then at least when they're talking, they're more engaged in the conversation. And especially if it's negotiations or anything of that nature, or interviewing someone for a crime, or even as a situation, crisis intervention type of thing, if there's a mental break or psychosis or whatever. But I was just joking around with you, man.
I don't know.
It's just a stupid joke.
But hand gestures actually end up helping too, because every time you bring in, you're bringing in that person also.
Or you can move your hands out like this as you're talking to people. And a lot of times then their eyes are moving. I mean, I'm not saying that
to disarm them.
Yes. Yeah. There's a great video. It's now just even starting to kind of circulate again, but it's like from like the late 90s in Las Vegas. And it's a Las Vegas patrol officer, and he's telling a guy, he's closing the gap. So as he's talking to the guy, he's explaining to him in a calm voice. He's saying, you need to remove your hands from your pockets. And the guy won't remove his hands. And he's like, I'm asking you one more time. And you watch the officer's hand come out here. He's like, I'm asking you one more time, remove your hands from your pocket. And he keeps his hand like kind of hanging out here. But the guy's got his hand in his pocket and he's got the 1,000-yard stare, like just staring through the officer. And he closes the gap and gets within a few steps of the guy. And he's like, I'm telling you for the last time, remove your hand from your pocket. And before you notice anything, the officer hits the guy right across his throat or his trachea with the web of his hand. And immediately the guy collapses and he gets him in custody. Now everybody now is starting to question the tactics and say, well, we're talking about 20-something years ago. But it is one of those where he's putting his hand out here and what he's doing is getting his hand in position to actually strike. But also, if the guy does start to get fixated, you bring it out here. But
yeah, it's more like
magicians do it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's very. I wish I could actually do something like that.
What, pull a rabbit out of a hat? What are you talking about? Like,
no, I know I'm not. I can't. I get people to. I talk to people and everything like that. And doing the whole charisma thing.
Yeah.
Not one bit charismatic at all.
You're not charismatic?
I can talk to people. And people will end up talking to me, but I always get the weirdos. So it's like not even a challenge. I was going to go feed a friend of mine's dog. And this guy ended up coming in. He was asking me, he's like screaming at me. It's like, dude, can you tell me something? It's like, yeah, sure, whatever. What's going on, buddy? Mind you, I'm usually armed. So this is not a safety factor for me. I'm prepared. So I'm going up to the guy and I'm talking to him. I was like, what's going on? It's like, are the cops after me? Are they right behind me? I'm like, what? No. What's, I mean, he was out of, I used his phone to get his therapist's phone number so he can get back on his meds. And I was like, hey, and then I called a buddy of mine that was from the police department. I was like, hey, I got this guy that's, he's out there. And I'm fearing for his life and the life of others. Could you come by and make sure that he's taken care of? He came by and I was like, hey, this is a cop friend of mine. So he's going to take care of you. And I told my buddy what was going on. He's like, really? How do you keep on doing this? You are like bringing crazy. So
because you're inviting, you're probably very nice when you see a stranger. You probably smile. You have a very what I would say like an inviting body language or posture.
I guess, but it's. I know I could probably be a cult leader, but I just don't want it.
See, that's what you want to get. You want to get to the very end of it. He's like, I'm not going to lie. I could probably be a cult leader. I just sucked in 3 people to sit here and talk to me right now. So
that is true.
I mean, David will tell you, I'm the exact opposite. Like when we're out in public, like, I don't know, I kind of have this, I don't know, resting dickhead face or something going on.
You're a people repellent?
Yeah. I mean,
really?
Unless there's something that I can identify with that person, like if I'm talking to another vet or
the Red Sox, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, do Red Sox fans, we are the worst at talking to each other about sports.
Yeah.
Because even though we love the team, some people love the management, some people hate the management, some people love this player, some people hate this player. It's a toxic environment. So, I mean, generally, I'll hang out with other Red Sox fans at a game.
But if a white van showed up that said, hey, free talk about Red Sox, you might not get in the van.
There's no way I'm getting in that van.
Free talk about
I would rather hang out with a Yankees fan than get into a sports talk discussion with a bunch of Red Sox fans.
Yeah. Do you ever smile at complete strangers or no?
Oh, yeah.
I know you do. I'm saying big man, Red Sox.
I do. No, I do.
You do?
And it's it's more of a recent development.
Because you're newly married, right?
Yeah, my wife has I don't know, she has found this untapped resource of niceness that apparently I had within me. But
That's good.
Yeah, apparently. People who have known me before were like, yeah, no, I mean, you were cool to hang out with, man, but I wouldn't like go seek you out in a room. But now you're just kind of like you walk in like you own the place. I'm like, well, I did that before, but I guess it's because I'm smiling now. I don't know. But yeah,
it was almost as bad because I went down to TAC the first time I went down to TAC, and just to get that face to where it wasn't like, you're going to do this for me, blah, 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 blah. I ended up getting a FaceTime with Matt Best.
If you're going to tell the story, David, tell it right. He said he was going down there, and he said that there was a chance he was going to get to hang out with these people. And I was like, I was completely kidding when I was like, well, get him on FaceTime. And he was like, well, I'll see what I can do. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, right, whatever. Okay. And I completely just put it out of my head. And I'm sitting there. It's a Saturday, and I'm watching. I forget what it was that I was watching. I was in the middle of educating my two youngest boys in the ways of 1980s movies, right?
Oh, right on.
Yeah, see, Breakfast Club, Short Circuit, stuff like that. Anyway, my phone rings.
Short Circuit. Sorry.
Hey,
Short Circuit is sad. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's
so
sad.
my phone rings, and it's David, and it's a FaceTime call, and I'm like, all right, well, what does he want? Putz. And I answer the phone, and then there's Matt Best on my screen. I'm like, oh shit, So I'm not gonna lie, I kind of fangirled out for a second, but I tried to regain my composure. I failed miserably, and then he gets on the phone, and he's like, so, little fangirl. I was like, shut up. Just shut up. It was not one of my brighter moments. It was not a shining moment for me. I'm just like,
but
whatever.
You smiled at a stranger.
Yeah, that's right.
Smiled at a complete, utter stranger that now is probably thinking he needs to get a restraining order. I don't know. But
did y'all talk about the amazing screen? I can't even make a joke. You mentioned Short Circuit, and I'm sorry, man.
You stop it.
No.
Johnny
Johnny Five. No, the only reason I showed my kids that movie is because, like, the hounding and the incessant Johnny Five jokes that I received as a kid when that movie came out. I'm like, okay, it's old. Go away. Shut up. Right. But like, no, like he had a video that just came out called Blind Date. I was just like, hey, I saw that. It was pretty cool. And he flashed his wife up on the screen who was standing behind him. And he's like, yeah, blind date. And I was like, yeah, see, that's what's up. And in the back of my head, I was like, God, did you just say what's up? Oh my God. But, and it's like now, okay, I'm in a relatively nice neighborhood. We just bought this house about a year ago, and trying to introduce myself to the neighbors. Some of them are a little bit, kind of but they're, for the most part, like the people that live across the street and next door to them, and the guy that lives behind me currently, I'm pretty good friends with them. Just go out and kind of make small talk and everything like that, especially when I'm cutting my grass, because we talk crap about the guy down the street who's got one of those nice, like, golf course lawnmowers, and his front yard looks like a putting green, and we hate that guy.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably convince him to be in a cult.
Yeah. Grass cutting cult.
Well, like, okay, so the guy is out there every day. He's got one of those nice mowers, and it's I mean, his front yard, I'm not kidding, looks like a putting green. It's ridiculous, and we hate that guy.
Do we know that I think it was today, what movie in the 80s was released today and may have been in the top 3 greatest movies of the 1980s? Do not Google it. Get away from the keyboard. I'm joking. There's no way you would know this, and I wouldn't have known it, but
Transformers.
No.
That was released years ago. Like,
wait, did you say in the 80s or did you say what year?
No, I didn't say what year. It was released today. Oh, 1984. I'm sorry. It was released in 1984. On today's date, I think, or yesterday, maybe. Probably one of the top 3 greatest movies of the 80s.
Do you have a shirt?
No, I do not.
Okay.
It wasn't.
The easiest way to narrow it down is to think of the top 3 to 5 greatest movies of the 1980s. I can guarantee you.
I know, but I just don't know their dates. Terminator.
No.
Close, but no.
That came out in May.
Predator.
No, but that's one of the
late.
top 3. But that's one of the top 3. But no.
Was it Alien?
Nope. That was 19. Yeah, I think 85.
Flight of the Navigator.
Oh,
The Explorers. Why not go with the Explorers too?
hey, the
Hey, show
Explorer.
your son's Flight of the Navigator.
Yeah, Flight of the
Oh
Navigator.
no, I did that.
Nope.
I did that. That was a
Yes.
that was a plus. That was like second movie of the first weekend I showed them.
Feeful?
What's that? What'd you say, Andre?
Was it Feifel or Feeful, the mouse?
Oh, I
Bible
thought you
in
said. I
American
thought you.
Tail?
No, I thought Andrea. I thought you said it was your favorite movie, Mac and Me, but it was not.
Stop.
That wasn't even funny.
No.
It was.
Hang on, hang on.
Red
I'm going to go
showed
with one more.
Conan O'Brien all the time.
No, it
You
was
say
Red
what?
Dawn.
Yeah,
Damn, that did came out.
you Googled that. I can see you
He
reading.
totally did.
Pissed.
He
You know
did
how
Google it.
movie knowledge I have, and that was stumping me. I really,
Yeah.
I'm about to go to North Carolina
Get up
and
there and
Look.
piss on that radiator, boy.
That's
Yeah.
right. Hey, here's another quiz for you. What was the name of the high school that the Wolverines attended?
See, my hands are up here. I'm not Googling anything.
It's so obscure. It would be.
I just
it'd be
remember
very
the Wolverines.
Yeah, it was Calumet. It was set in like Calumet, Colorado, Calumet High School. These are things that no one should know unless you know about Red Dawn.
Yeah,
But
I mean-
yeah, I think Red Dawn was like released today or yesterday of.
That is a great movie.
1984.
it was a good movie. It still pisses me off they try to remake that.
Would you say
know.
that they formed a cult?
Yes.
Trying to bring us back around, boys. Just
would-
trying to
I
bring
would
us back
Right,
around.
back around the cult.
More of a militia.
I agree.
You know, the militias, you can
Right,
actually keep
counterinsurgency.
as a cult depending on what they do. I mean, do you call it a cult or do you call it a terrorist organization? Make it worse.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
that's
look at-
really
look at,
good. It's all dependent upon who's writing the history book.
Yeah, because
True.
you could say ISIS is a cult, and you can also say ISIS is a terrorist organization. And you can also say
I would say that most cults, if we're looking back on them, so we talked about outside of like Manson, most cults seek to, like we said, pull away, right? Isolate you from your people, from your safety net. And then generally it's like if there's harm, it's done within. I feel like for the most part, most of the cults are not doing harm outwardly. Outside of Manson, I'm sure there's others that I can't think of right now, but I feel like generally speaking, wouldn't you say that would be the difference between a terrorist organization and a cult? They may inflict terror upon their people, but ultimately they use it to gain their trust.
yeah. Well, it's almost like the Yahweh cult. Yahweh, the Islamic Yahweh cult down in Florida for a while. I mean, they took out hits on people that were part of the cult member. I went over.
I do feel like it's less likely, though. I mean, that the violence goes outward. You know what I mean?
yeah,
because the cults are basically just trying to control
yeah.
membership from within, right? Is what you're saying. Like, they're
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
No, I know I see that, but it's very, 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 very weird that actually does happen. I mean, Yahweh was one that actually ended up doing that. I'm trying to think. I mean,
I guess
Didn't-
if we're seeking to define cult,
the original Mormon group ended up doing a massacre. So
Well, depending on who you talk to, the Scientologists do the same thing. They just don't get spanked for it because they've got the California government in their pocket.
They've got money and government behind them.
Yeah.
All the money in the world.
See what I did there for you, Andrea? I tried to bring it to Scientology just for you.
Thank you. We started with the Anthill cult, and we're bringing it right on back up to Scientology.
Yeah. I deep dived Scientology one time, and it's just crazy.
Well, that could be its own.
Was it Leah Ramey?
Yeah, Rimini.
Wow. Like, that is crazy.
She told all of it, too.
I mean,
She
even
messing around.
From what I hear, Tom Cruise isn't even part of Scientology anymore.
No, I think he had to agree to leave the Church of Scientology so that way he could see his daughter again.
Yeah, I think that's the story I heard as well. But that does not mean that he's not still 100%. I think it's all, again, talk about optics. I think that he had to look like he's leaving the church for them, like, because they will kind of like blacklist you or, banish you, from the community, so to speak. It's the same with, what's his name? The guy who is the curly headed guy from that 70s show.
The rape?
With the sunglasses, kind of the lighter fro white guy.
Yeah,
he played the older brother in The Ranch too. Danny Masterson.
Yes, Danny Masterson, and he recently was, and I don't want to quote it because I'll get it wrong. He was convicted. Was it rape?
Yeah, I think it was rape. Yeah,
and so then, but he was a member.
I think they classified it as sexual misconduct.
I think that's what it was too. I feel like rape feels strong for whatever they convicted him of. And he was a member of the church as well, and I think same thing.
For like a long time frame too.
Yeah, but there was some weirdness about him leaving. Like, he left because he had to leave, but I think he's kind of still part of it. But just, again, for the perception of things, it looks like he's been banished. I don't know. It's weird. I don't like any of that.
I still like some of the funding they get. Some of the cults do, because the Nexium cult that.
Oh yeah. Yep.
They ended up using Amway.
Yep.
That was the strangest thing. Of course, Johnny almost had us get somebody on the show because
David, again, tell the story correctly, dude.
Go ahead, Johnny. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Okay, so when David and I first started doing the show together, we had this idea that we were going to invite local business owners in to highlight their businesses to try to, drum up support, one, for our show, and two, to bring kind of like a free advertising to these different businesses.
Okay.
And one guy reached out to us, and I was like, all right, well, I sent all the contact information over to David. So David does what he does, and he comes back and he's like, yeah, no, this dude's Amway. And I was like, yeah, okay, all right, I'm not down with that. So, David's trying to make it sound like, oh, I was inviting the cult into the show. Like, no. It's like, I should have vetted the guy before I even sent him over, but because David is the producer, I figured that was his job.
Maybe you guys need to delegate your job roles and responsibilities.
That's what I was trying to do.
I might embellish a lot of things in my lifetime. I do. I mean, me and Andrea might end up in a field, her on one side, me on the other, trying to trap a vampire. I mean, she's already a go for that from what she texted me.
Do y'all want to see his face?
Yeah. What y'all?
You've seen it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I told you a little bit. You didn't respond back about me.
Okay,
me having to hunt a vampire.
I have to see this.
Yeah.
This is the one. But he was not after my love and affection. It was just I keep at night on TikTok, for some reason, I keep finding myself in his live that he's doing. And so then I started asking him questions about being a vampire, and he didn't answer. And so I was kind of getting annoyed. So I just kind of started trolling a little bit. That's all.
But
Oh,
I sent BC the stuff, and then he didn't message me back.
Was that the same guy? Hold on, was that the same guy or different?
No, mine.
That's the one.
That's the one.
No, wait, his or my?
The vampire I'm actually talking about is the vampire Dusseldorf. There's a YouTube.
You sent me that one.
Yeah, it was Peter Curtin, the vampire Dusseldorf. He
and,
went over.
And somebody who claims to be him was commenting on the video. Yeah.
And so I have this idea of, I'm not like Blade or anything, so I'm gonna have to do the deer hunting thing. I'm just gonna get up a deer stand, get a couple of Twilight books and Anne Rice books, and pop them outside and see who comes in. And
He told you, and he said to you, because you sent me that screenshot. He said, "I know more than you ever will."
Yeah.
And you said, "LOL," and he said, "Stop, delete your video about me." Was he talking to you?
Yeah, it was.
You had a video about it?
Yeah, Psycho and Sociopath. I did a whole German month, and that was one of the.
Oh.
In that thread, if you go to that actual video and look in the comments, I'm like, hey, you are more than welcome to present your side.
Oh, that was you. Yeah, I saw that in there. I didn't know that was your. Yep. Yeah. That's hilarious.
So me and Andrea might be becoming hunters. I'm gonna have to get a 1967 Chevy Impala for this whole venture. So
I've got garlic downstairs
okay, cool.
Make sure you pack a lot of salt.
and a Twilight book.
Yeah, that's for the bait. I still can't believe it, but it's sad how some people just go off and they create this delusion. I mean, that's how I can see how people get into cults and everything. I'm bringing it back around.
Very nice, David. I was just about to comment that it's nice out here in the weeds.
Yeah. But seeing stuff like that, it's that's how I can see that it's easy to get people susceptible to go to join cult. But other times I'm like, how did they? Oh, never mind.
Well, and I think the takeaway is what we touched on at the beginning, in that it's not, I think that we usually think, and maybe predominantly it is people and maybe not the most secure place in their lives. Like one idea is that some of the victims, let's say, that kind of subscribe to this are the ones, like we said, that are maybe new to an area, feeling a little hopeless about life, had likely suffered a personal or professional loss of some sort. And so, you can speak to that. Like BC said a minute ago, if you know what somebody's wanting to buy, that's what you're going to sell them. So if they need hope and they need, love and affection and attention and whatever. But then conversely, we have the group that, is like happy about life and educated and on a great career path and wanting, self-improvement and this whole idea of this, like, this better me, right? Like better me today kind of thing. And they're selling like, yes, and I can help you be a better you and this and this and that. And then you just kind of get in, because they sell you this idea that they've got exactly what you need to go to that next, whatever level it is, to fulfill your own life. So it's kind of like every walk of life can, potentially be a victim of this. And the other takeaway is, like a lot of people said, particularly in some of these kind of like the grosser, the yucky ones that don't end well, is that it doesn't happen overnight. They, David Koresh didn't pull them in. Now, maybe some of them who are quite naive with humans, maybe, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and they gain your trust, and little by little that manipulation is happening to where next thing you know, you're fully in. So it's interesting. Okay. And also, sorry, I'm rambling now, but a lot of the big ones we talked about, like the People's Temple, the Jones, the Heaven's Gate, the Crash, like these are things that went on for years, like to that point, right? It didn't happen. And in 3 weeks, 90 people were dead. We're talking 20 years, 30 years, some of them 40 years. So they're having children and grandchildren under this rule, if you will. So, I mean, it really does take a long time to get to where they ended things.
Well, yeah, we'll bring this down to a close. The only, because I was thinking about it just now. It's like, wouldn't the Tony Robinson stuff be considered like a cult? I mean, it's not like a bad thing. They're trying to all make money and everything. I mean,
well,
what about?
I don't think so much Robbins. It's more maybe Joel Osteen.
Okay, yeah.
I think he's just a scammer. I mean, I think he's just a sleazeball. I don't necessarily think that.
Well, especially down here when Harvey hit and there was all that flooding, and he absolutely refused to open the doors. Um,
Oh, gross.
they didn't open the doors to Lakewood Church until basically they were kind of shamed into it by the public.
Yeah.
I just think
And
that that's full on. That's just a scam. I mean, that's somebody who,
Yeah.
and I think to me, it's one of the more ultimate scams, like to use, if you're a person that you're supposed to be a protector, a police officer, someone in the medical field, something like that, and you do harm to children or elderly people or anybody, but you know what I mean? If you're looked at to be trusted and you do harm, or if you use God or your religion as a way to wipe people clean of their finances, that's also another kind of just evil, gross. And I mean, I think ultimately I wouldn't even call it a cult. I just call it that he's just a criminal. I mean,
I mean, it's what I've read a few of the books that he's written, and and I'm like, okay, all right. I mean, I kind of see where he's trying to take it, but I mean, there's a lot of people down here that, I mean, the attendance for Lakewood Church is, I think, is, if I remember correctly, if I'm hearing correctly, is kind of dropped off a cliff.
I think he's been exposed pretty widely at this point.
He has. I mean, there's.
I think it was the whole money in the wall thing.
Do what?
The money in the wall thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's still billboards up all over Houston, especially down around like 610. But the amount of plastic surgery that this gentleman has had, I'm like, oof.
He's almost or Kindle.
And I mean, his wife has aged a bit more gracefully than he has, for sure. But yeah, I've driven by there a couple of times, going into the Bel Air section of downtown, and I mean, because it used to be the Staples Center where the Rockets used to play, but there's just, I don't know. I think the illusion, like you said, he's been exposed. I mean, the illusion that he had kind of cast over the greater Houston area has faded considerably. So
that's good.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's as far as like the destructive cults, I think that there's a fine line between what could be considered, like David was trying to say earlier, is a terrorist group or maybe a militia group to, versus, I mean, the one thing I think that they've all got in common is the fanaticism, but that all has to start with one person. It has to start with somebody's interpretation of something that they've read, or their interpretation of world events, and all that, and then it's just them. The challenge is them going out and finding people that are close to being as like-minded, if not completely like-minded, and then just birds of a feather kind of a situation.
Well, yeah, like, again, it was like it's either political, sexual, or financial, the motive or the goal. And then, like BC was saying earlier, all you guys, like, it's a charismatic, it's gonna be a charismatic person that's leading it. So whatever the end is, whatever your end game is, you got that right guy to do it, and he's gonna find his audience. Be it terrorist, militia, cult. I mean, that's all. That all I think is very similar.
Yeah. So that's about it. In on that conversation, everybody. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. I'm David Dickerman. That's Johnny Skelton, BC Sanders, and Andrea up all late. And check us on the flip side.